restart the meeting with item 5.2, which is the address at 221 New Kent Road, London SE1, which is members pages 137 to 212 of the agenda pack and the relevant pages of the addendum report. Can I invite the officer considering report to make their presentation?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just start by sharing my screen.
Okay.
And then I'll make a start. So this application is for the comprehensive redevelopment of the site to provide a mixed-use building consisting of a hotel, employment and retail floor space. The site itself is bound by New Kent Road to the south and Theobald Street to the west. It is located in the central activity zone and within the Old Kent Road opportunity area. New Kent Road itself is a major arterial road which crosses two opportunity areas, the Old Kent Road opportunity area and the Elephant and Castle opportunity area. And this is just a site in context. The existing site comprises of 4 B8 distribution units with a large parking and servicing yard to the rear. This, as far as we understand, is vacant except for 2 units which are currently in temporary use. Whilst the site itself is of no heritage value and not located within a conservation area, it sits in the vicinity of a number of listed buildings which are shown on the plan, the closest being the row of terraces on Bartholomew Street, which is grade 2 listed. And therefore, a very special regard needs to be paid to the setting and special architectural and historic character of the listed assets. To the south is a fragment of the protected London Square in the Paragon Gardens, which is also designated open space. Also on the slide, marked with a star, is the closest local pub. A few more images on the screen showing the site in its context. The larger image is of a view looking from New Kent Road up towards Elephant and Castle, with the site shown within that dotted red line. The image on the top right is looking down New Kent Road towards Bricklayers Roundabout and the Flyover, which can just about be seen on that top right-hand side corner. The proposal, as I said, is for the redevelopment of the site to provide a Part 3, Part 6, Part 9-storey mixed-use building with 200 hotel bedrooms, 1,354 square metres of B-class floor space, and 116 square metres of A3 to A4 class floor space, which would serve the employment area, the hotel, and members of the public. A covered shared service yard is also proposed to the rear, and which is accessed from Theobald Street. The scheme has undergone a number of revisions and iterations. The resulting building form sees the tallest element of the building, which is the 9-storey element, be located on the junction where New Kent Road meets Theobald Street. It then transitions to 6 stories in the middle portion and then down to 3 stories where the site is closest to Bartholomew Street. This creates a series of cascading facades which have been complemented with vertical greening and which will be discussed alongside materiality in the next few slides of the presentation. The building has been designed to step down to respond to the lower heights along Bartholomew Street, and it is important to note that the site adjoins 1A Bartholomew Street, which is a recently completed infield scheme, which doesn't form part of the listing. And that's just a designed view. The commercial element would provide 1,354 square metres of commercial floor space at ground and mezzanine levels. The employment element has been designed to suit a range of uses and uses, with the provision of generous floor-to-ceiling heights and a heavy goods lift. Whilst as a whole the development would result in an uplift in employment floor space, it should be noted that altogether the proposal falls slightly short of full reprovision, with a net loss of 20 square metres of B-class floor space. The other retail uses proposed are, however, consistent with aspiration for town centre frontages and emerging town centre designation, and is supported in this location. There are also wider benefits, which include the intensification of on-site jobs and the provision of modern commercial floor space, 10% of which will be affordable. Sorry. Moving up the building, the remainder of the floors are dedicated to the hotel. The hotel element is considered to be good quality, which follows a simple logical layout and provides ample daylight and outlook to all bedrooms. 10% of these will be wheelchair accessible, which would make the proposal fully policy compliant in that regard. Whilst the hotel is considered to be appropriately located and the proposal is in general conformity with adopted and emergent policies regarding hotels, there is a consideration for over-provision that must be considered. Only one hotel exists along the Old Kent Road corridor, which is the Eurotraveler, and one consented as part of the Southernwood Retail Park scheme. In terms of the Old Kent Road opportunity area, a hotel at the northern end is considered to be a positive addition. Zooming into that northern end of the opportunity area and this general area, the hotel assessment provided shows that hotels both existing and planned in the development pipeline are not located in close proximity to the development site. And that's the image on the bottom right. Focusing on the architectural detailing of the scheme, the building has been well designed in a simplistic brick palette throughout, although with some variation both in the brickwork and the brick type. Spandrel panels would frame the large bay windows proposed at the base of the building, and on the upper floors, similar paneling is used to the fenestration, which, as well as being an architectural feature, are also functional elements which provide privacy and solar shading into the bedrooms. The architecture proposed is considered to be high quality for a number of reasons, but particularly as it avoids the repeated monotony that could be expected of a use such as a hotel. Landscaping forms an integral part of the architecture in the scheme, with extensive green roofs, integrated planters to the main elevation, and elevated climb on the eastern elevation. These all contribute to the overall greening of the site and of New Kent Road. In the interest of protecting amenity, these have not been designed as communal areas and won't be accessible other than for essential maintenance. In terms of the comments received, 17 representations were received, of which 15 objected to the proposal. This excludes a late objection, which would bring the total to 18 and which is included within the addendum report. And just whilst I've drawn your attention to the addendum report, following its publication, it was felt that the condition regarding the coach restriction would be better addressed within the legal agreement. Related to this, it should also be noted that 2 further conditions are recommended, which are the secured by design condition and the flood evacuation and management plan, which were missed from the initial draft recommendation. And finally, and to conclude this presentation, is a designed up view of the scheme. Thank you.
You're muted, Chair.
Yeah.
Still muted.
Yeah. Myself on mute.
Chair, we can hear you now.
Oh, you can? Ah.
Yes. Oh, you just muted yourself again. Chair, you're muted. That's it.
Ah, there you are. The machine is trying to catch up with us. Here we are. Thank you for your presentation. Here you are. Can I first of all just move on to members of the committee? Are there technical questions on the report you'd like to make inquiries? And if possible, if you could save the substantive questions for the applicant. Are there any technical questions? Oh.
Can I just ask about the vertical greening you mentioned? Where is that?
That is on the eastern elevation, Councillor.
Which is the east?
The one that would be closest to Bartholomew Street. So on that 6-storey and the 9-storey portion of that elevation.
So what does the vertical greening consist of?
It consists of inbuilt planters with trellises that would assist in greening that elevation.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Are there further technical questions?
Chair, 2 members have indicated, Councillors Newens and Merrill.
Thank you. If I take Councillor Merrill first, as I've not heard from him unusually today. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to check the figures on the hotels. You mentioned Euro, which I know down the road from there, but also we have a hostel across the road. Is that calculated in the figures as well?
The hostel, yes, it's part of that hotel assessment. And on the slides, it is shown just below the application site.
So down the icon, there's 2 hotels then, from my knowledge, and I don't know if anyone else wants to add any more to that list.
I believe it's 2. It is, yeah, that's correct, isn't it?
Yes.
That's right. Okay. Is that fine, Councillor Morel? There are 2.
That's fine.
Very good, very good. So, Councillor Newens.
Hello, thanks. I just wanted to, I was going to ask sort of similar to Kath, but just to clarify, so there's that eastern elevation, that's a green wall, is it? And then my understanding from the presentation was that there's a green wall, and also you have rooftop greening, green roofs as well. I understand that they're not, they don't have any access, there's no access to them for residents or anyone like that. But it's so you have a green wall and green roof terrace, green roofs.
Yes, Councillor, both. So they are ample green roofs, as well as the inbuilt planters, which will introduce vertical greening to the site.
Righty.
Chair, can I just ask that once members have asked their question, unless they have a further question, if they press on the hand icon, otherwise it looks like they've got a further question.
Yes, indeed. It's this will be more challenging today. All righty. Now then, thank you for that. Thank you. Are there further questions from the committee to officers? If not, I will now move on to the objectors, if I may. Is there a objection on the line? I believe Sophie Roebuck and Debbie Walsh. Yep.
Yes. Good morning. I hope you can see me. My video is working.
All righty, let's have a look. I can. And are you together? Are you by yourself? Oh, I see Debbie. Hello. I see
we're
Debbie.
both on the call, as are a number of residents, but it'll be myself speaking for the full few minutes.
Excellent. Can I, just for formality's sake, just ask you to introduce yourself, both, if you introduce yourselves, and once you've done that, I will indicate you can start your presentation, and just say that at 30 seconds prior to the end of your presentation, I will indicate 30 seconds remaining. So again, can I just ask you to introduce yourselves?
Good morning. I'm Sophie Roebuck, a resident of Bartholomew Street, and I'm speaking on behalf of the residents of Bartholomew Street, the Lawson Tenants Association, and broadly the kind of deeply concerned community.
Very good, thank you. And Debbie Walsh, you want to introduce yourself as well? As I can see you.
I'm Deborah Walsh and I'm Secretary of the Lawson Estate Tenants Association.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. In that case, then, you may begin your presentation now.
Thank you. I'm keen first to stress that we have no objection to the principle of this scheme. I think we all truly recognise there's a strong need to support economic recovery and that we're in a central activities zone and emerging opportunities area. However, the design of this particular scheme is unsympathetic and poor and has generated significant local objection. The harm in particular to our Grade 2 list of Bartholomew Street, a 200-year-old Georgian terrace of historical importance, is substantial. The image included in the document is flattened, but the development will be overbearing. In any event, the public benefits are not capable of outweighing the harm. I'd also like to draw the committee's attention to the Southwark DRP's concerns in paragraph 77. Officers say the scheme is amended, but it does not seem to have since gone back to the DRP. Whilst I must reiterate that the local community strongly object, should you move to approve, we have 4 key concerns that we would like to be addressed and have prepared 4 solutions which would soften the impact of this significant disruption for so many. Point 1, we're encouraged to see a number of amendments, however there will still be considerable loss of privacy. With the east-facing windows of the hotel looking straight down onto a school and Bartholomew Street residence garden, which are private spaces our families enjoy, we propose a simple solution that all east-facing windows are frosted. Point 2, in the plans, the shared workspace is accessed via a corner entrance facing down Bartholomew Street and incidentally directly onto my front door of my home. And my partner works in a similar shared workspace not far from here and can attest that workspace entrances cause considerable commotion where people bump into colleagues, stand around on a break, hail taxis, etc. We propose a simple solution that the entrance be moved further along the New Kent Road, significantly reducing the noisy impact of people congregating on our quiet street. Point 3, with such scant provision for parking in the scheme, it will be Bartholomew Street where coaches and taxis will wait and collect. We've proposed 2 simple solutions. Firstly, that a non-coach hotel operator is selected, and secondly, that the hotel address be on Theobald Street, which is a non-residential service street rather than the New Kent Road. Point 4, there's been a disturbing lack of consultation with the community throughout this process. We would like clear reassurance that the developer and contractors would work closely with local residents, hearing concerns and taking genuine measures to make this a scheme that the community can support and not resent. I'm happy to discuss these questions further during the questions section. And again, whilst these solutions should not
30 seconds.
Whilst these solutions should not be seen as the community's endorsement of this scheme, quite far from it, it would be a devastating blow. We'd be grateful if these conditions could be attached to the application should the committee move to approve. Ultimately, in an emerging opportunity area, it's a shame that this major scheme is coming forward with such a poor design, which will form a bad precedent for the further development of this exciting and vibrant area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now, the committee members, can you use your digital hand? I have Councillor Newland. Before we begin, Councillor Newland, are there other committee members who wish to speak? Councillor King, is there another one? Councillor Whittam? No? Okay, let's start with Councillor Newland in that case. Councillor Newland?
Hello, yes. Sorry, I just wanted to ask for clarification because it all went a bit quickly. I wondered if you could go through the conditions that you would like imposed again, sort of, and maybe you want to add a little bit more detail about why you want those conditions.
Of course, yeah, and I wasn't sure if I can pop them into the chat after this, if that's helpful. Point 1 was around privacy. So we appreciate all the amendments that have been made to date, but with the east-facing windows of the hotel, they look straight down onto a local school and also the Bartholomew Street residence gardens, which is, I think, the predominantly family gardens. So the solution that we would feel relevant would be that all east-facing windows of the hotel are frosted. Hopefully that covers point 1. I don't know if there's any other thoughts on that. The second,
move the entrance.
The second point was around the shared workspace entrance. So currently, with the plans, it faces down Bartholomew Street, and incidentally is our front door. But I think that's the lesser concern. The key concern, the amount of waiting, perhaps noise and commotion around people bumping into colleagues, waiting to be picked up, taking breaks, etc. at that workspace entrance. And a very simple solution to this would be moving that busy workspace entrance further down the New Kent Road, which would significantly kind of reduce the noisy impact of people congregating in our quiet street.
Okay, thank you.
Point 2. I think that the third point is a real concern around where kind of coaches and taxis will wait and collect. I suppose given I can elaborate a little further here, that would also extend to maybe works vehicles, lorries, etc. when the building, if the building does happen. The two solutions around the taxis and coaches would be, the first one would be a non-coach operator hotel being selected when the hotel operator is tendered. So that would be the first point. And then secondly, that the address of the hotel be moved from New Kent Road to Theobald Street, which is a non-residential service street rather than the New Kent Road, which would help with taxis, drop off, etc.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Newlands.
And then, sorry, the fourth
Sorry,
point.
I thought there were four.
Yeah, there was a fourth one. Sorry, I just paused.
It was 3 and 4 actually that I was trying to clarify. Thanks.
And then the fourth point was that there's been quite a disturbing lack of consultation with the community throughout this process. And I think, look, today we're still not endorsing the scheme going ahead. By no means do we want this to disturb a listed 200-year-old Georgian terrace, but I think we're trying to work with you, and we would like to get clear reassurance that the developer and contractors would work closely and sympathetically with local residents, hearing concerns and taking genuine measures to make this a scheme that we can support maybe in time and not resent. Now, I feel that actually Deborah may be better placed to speak around the consultation if anyone has any particular questions on the way the consultation's gone about. She was also introduced on the call.
Very good. Thank you for that. And if I may invite Deborah to make comment on the consultation now.
Chair, sorry, just Councillor Hargrove has indicated that he has a question for the objector, so just bear that in mind. Sorry, thank you.
Duly noted. Yeah, duly noted. Thank you. Yeah, Deborah Walsh, if you could make comment on the consultation, please.
Of course, yeah. I just wanted it to be made known that not one of the 501 properties that are currently on Lawson Estate have been consulted with on this scheme at all. I found out from a local tenant who lives on Bartholomew Street. I had a look at the planning application notice on a lamppost, and I then went online to make our objections known, and I was very clear in those objections. Not at any point have the Tenants Association or anywhere else been involved. Out of all the 501 properties, we currently have our own development taking place for new homes with Leather Market JMB that are being built in the middle of the Lawson Estate. And throughout the whole of that process, we have been consulted and worked with by the architects. We've had 21 meetings in the local Roundhouse Hall, which is less than 100 metres from the new proposed development. Not at any point did anybody write, speak with us or consult us on this project on New Kent Road. And 3 of our flats are all within 100 metres, 3 blocks are within 100 metres of this proposed design. So I was a little bit confused as to why we were not consulted about this.
Right here. Thank you. Thank you for your response. It's duly noted. Can I now go to Councillor King?
Thanks, Chair. And apologies if I can't turn my camera on. I think I'm going to
That's okay.
if I do.
No, it's all right. We can hear you. It's all right.
So it was really helpful to get that information about the consultation process and what's been lacking from it. What my specific question was whether there'd been any consultation at all, particularly the Bartholomew Street residents. I've obviously had a really useful update that there hasn't been on the Lawson Estate. And if there has been any consultation, did you have the opportunity to raise your 4 very useful points with the applicant?
Hi. I can perhaps answer this, and then if Deborah has anything to add. So there have been 2 consultations, one which was on Bartholomew Street. These are quite a while ago, if I'm honest, and were more around the residential plan that was previously put forward, and I think got pulled out before this hotel development was put forward. There was one other, but if I'm honest, they weren't really circulated. We found out about this from bits of paper tied on lampposts. There hasn't been an overwhelming kind of embrace or want to engage with the local community, which is why it's a little frustrating that today we've had to use 3 minutes to kind of put in our 4 things that we would like to talk to you about, because there's not really been communication to date. And again, you know, that these points we put forward are not an endorsement. It's purely trying to make the best of a bad situation. So yeah, most of the comments have been online through the formal planning process, rather than any face-to-face or engaging dialogue with the local community. Again, Deborah, I don't know if there's anything you could add to that. To put it into context, the Lawson estate isn't 100 miles away. It's the doorstep of the development.
Yeah, all I would add is that one of the consultations was done in the local public house, which no one knew about. And I believe only 18 people attended that. And the other one was actually held at Draper's Hall near Elephant and Castle, and only one person found the venue.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for Councillor King. Thank you for your question. Councillor McCullum.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sophie. That was a really useful presentation, and thank you for the constructive points as well as the wider objection. I think that will really help us as a committee. Can I go back? I think at the very beginning of your presentation, you said that you had general concerns with the design of the scheme as a whole, and I presume that's sort of the primary reason underpinning your overall objection. I wonder if you might just expand a little bit further on what your particular concerns are about the design.
Of course, and I think the key thing for our, you know, the community is that it's very overbearing, it's outkeeping, it's just completely out of scale with the rest of not only Bartholomew Street, as I mentioned, the kind of listed buildings, but the rest of the new Kent Road. It will cast, you know, a huge shadow over a lot of the street. There's a lot of, I suppose, concern as well that there's been elements of trying to keep it in keeping, but things like green walls and things like it will look so staggeringly out of place with the row of listed Georgian houses. I think that's in terms of mostly the design, but also just that it's the sheer scale of it, if I'm honest, and the corner entrance as well, of just, you know, feeding people onto a very, very quiet residential street, which I think will just be disruptive in terms of the way when you look at it aesthetically, but also would disrupt quite a lot of people's day of life. It's mostly kind of school children that walk up and down the road, families. There's not really much coming and going here, so it will be quite a big impact both aesthetically but also in terms of lifestyle as well. And we do all say all this, that we know we're in an emerging opportunity area. It's great that there's development happening. It just seems so outkeeping with everything else around it. That's kind of our big concern.
Right, hello. Oh, thank you. Sorry. Played up there. Councillor McCullum, do you have a further question?
No, Chair. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you. Councillor Hargrove.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Sophie, for your presentation. And my question is along the lines of Councillor King's question, and you pointed out how unsatisfactory the consultation has been with you along Bartholomew Street itself. Can you tell me, has there been any dialogue, like by email or telephone, with the applicant, and that you may have had the chance to propose some of the mitigation measures that you'd suggested to us?
Yeah, of course. There hasn't been, I'm afraid. There's been no engagement from certainly the Bartholomew Street residents side, and I don't know if Deborah has more to say from the.
I mentioned about Deborah because
yeah,
I think that the developer themselves will probably need to answer Debbie's point about three blocks being within 100 metres and why those blocks in particular wasn't consulted. But I'm kind of more focused in terms of my question with you is what chance that you've had is to have any ongoing dialogue other than specific meetings, public meetings.
Of course. I mean, if I raise my blind, you can literally see that's the development there, that's the site there. We live a stone's throw away. There's been no emails, no phone calls, no written correspondence. And whilst I'm not expecting to be, showered with meetings and calls and engagement, it's been really quite disappointing that, look, we're not naive to the fact that this is an area that will be developed, but we want it done in a positive way.
Sorry. I've got a message on here from the chair saying that he's having a problem and he's trying to reconnect.
Okay.
Can we ask? Do we just pause it there just for a moment?
Hold for a second, of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hear?
Welcome back, Chair. Yes, I just asked the objector to pause once I got your message. So
thank you.
If she wants to maybe pick up just a short while before you pause, that would be helpful.
Of course. And sorry if I'm repeating anything for anyone else. But I think that the question was around the communication. Now, Chair, I will do my window again. We live a line of a fence away from the development. There's been no emails, no calls, no written correspondence. There has been those face-to-face meetings, but they've been pretty rare and few and far between. I think it's just quite distressing that, as I said previously, we know we're in an area that will be developed, but there's just not been any engagement. We're quite an engaging community. We're a very close community on this street and more broadly, and there's actually just been no calls, no emails, no correspondence, no invite to have any dialogue, which is why it's been quite distressing to pick our top 4 concerns and get them into a tiny 3-minute conversation today. So that's why we welcome all these questions.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Hugo, for your question, and we do appreciate this. I'm somewhat perplexed by the consultation part of this, which I'd hoped we had covered previously. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to ask further questions of yourself, but you are going to be available to us later on. I think.
Sorry, Chair. I just noticed that Councillor Newens has got a hand up, just in case.
Right. Councillor Newens, is it a technical question on the report, Councillor Newens?
Sorry, I didn't take it down before. Sorry, I've done it now. So.
All right. So you do have a question or not? No.
Apologies.
You do not.
I left my hand up from the previous.
Right. Yes. Don't you worry. That's fine. In that case, if I may, I'm going to I've taken note of the objector's points. I'd like you both, Sophie and colleagues, to remain available to us. We may well return to you, but I think I'm keen to hear from the applicant or applicant agents, who are the next presenters, and that will allow us to ask the relevant questions of the agents and applicants, and we may well return to you to clarify, based upon what they've said, these other useful suggestions you've made. So I want to thank you very much, both of you, for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for hearing us. Thanks.
Pleasure. And you can see it's always necessary in my world to have at least 2 or 3 backup systems. So I'm now using my backup system, but there you are. So if I may move on to the applicant or applicant agent, are you present?
Good morning, Chair. Yes, I am. Simon Wallace, I'm the agent.
Very good. And I believe you've also got Clive Saul with you as well?
Yes, Chair. Yes. Well.
Excellent. In that case, then, can I just ask you both to formally introduce yourself, just for the record, and then at that point I will indicate that you have 3 minutes, and 30 seconds prior to the end of your presentation, I'll indicate that you have 30 seconds remaining. Please now introduce yourselves.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Simon Wallace, I'm from Southwark Planning. We are the agents on the application. I'll allow Clive to introduce himself.
Yes, Chair. It's Clive Saul from Clive Saul Architecture. We're the architect on this proposal.
Very good. Thank you very much. You may now begin your presentation. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'll probably deal with those 4 points raised by Sophie, perhaps in questions, and I can answer all of those points. I just wanted to give a quick overview of this scheme, which is a hotel for flexible workspace and a cafe. The site is considered to be an appropriate location for these uses due to its designations and excellent public transport. Research reports indicate there is limited stock in the area and capacity for a new hotel, particularly in the mid-budget range that this hotel is likely to be. The workspace provides very nearly the same amount of floor space as existing. It will be flexible space through its design to support creative and maker space, so suitable for small businesses, startups or individuals wanting to co-work. Space can accommodate around 135 jobs with a further 65 in the hotel, meaning a considerable uplift in employment at the site. And 10% of that workspace will be at an affordable rent, 25% below market level for 30 years. The design has evolved considerably through the design review panel, 2 public engagement events, together with many discussions with officers. It's noted that the committee report calls the building a high quality design. The height is taller than other buildings, but it is a corner location on a major road in an area of change, and is considered to be contextual and well executed through its architectural materials. The massing purposely steps up from 3 stories adjacent to Bartholomew Street to 9 on the main road junction. This is to protect the amenity of residents. Sunlight, daylight and overshadowing has been tested and all found to be within acceptable levels. Fenestration is designed to not cause overlooking, and the main area of massing is pulled away from the north and east boundaries so to not cause sense of enclosure to neighbours. A series of management plans will cover the operation of the service yard, the hotel, workspace, all to be in the section 106 in order to ensure good neighbourliness. The design approach, including stepping away of height and the chamfered edge corner, also allows the listed terrace and other heritage assets to continue to be fully appreciated, and there is limited impact on their setting. The proposals will improve the pedestrian environment immensely, creating a wider footway and active frontage. Overall, this somewhat unattractive site can be replaced with a high quality building that will bring many benefits, adding vibrancy, helping to foster the aims of the opportunity area, and providing more jobs in the local economy. And we hope you can support it. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Thank you very much for the presentation. Now, I see Councillor McCullum and Councillor King. Are there other members who wish to speak and can indicate now? Greatly appreciate. Are there other members? Councillor Whittam?
Yes, Chair.
And Councillor Morell. Okay, I'll take them in that order. So, Councillor McCullum, please answer your question.
Thank you, Chair. I've got sort of 3 questions which are all linked, so I'll ask them in one go, and then if you just make sure you do answer all parts of them, I'd appreciate it. I think you said just there in your presentation that the hotel would be a quote mid-budget range. Given what you've heard the objector say in her comments around coaches and considerations about access issues, can you just confirm whether a mid-budget range hotel is one that would anticipate having coaches? And if I suppose if so, I guess there's also a question about why it would be a mid-budget range hotel and whether that's something that you as the promoter of this scheme are sort of fully wedded to. Kind of as a slight aside, could you just clarify for me, as someone who doesn't know the hotel sector inside out, what a mid-budget range is, mid-budget range hotel is? Can you give an example of what sort of hotel brand that might be? And then the other part of my question, which is connected to that access issue, is around the address. Again, that's something that the objector raised, and I think partly the reason I'm sure she's asking is because you will know, like every one of us who lives in the real world, that a taxi driver, especially a minicab driver, will pull up at the point of the actual address, not at the point where not in the location where a taxi rank might be on the side or back street. So can you just confirm either that the hotel address already will be that side street address, or in fact that you would be prepared to accept that as being a condition of the planning? Thank you.
Well, there's quite a lot there. Simon, give it a try.
Shall I answer those? So first of all, on coaches, there won't be coaches, and the Section 106 agreement will include a clause to not allow coaches. to the hotel, and that would be made very clear in any marketing information about a future hotel that coaches are not allowed to come. So I believe that can be fully controlled in the planning. Yes, mid-budget range. I think that would be brands similar to maybe Novotel, Accor, Premier Inn. That is the sort of level. My client has had discussions with a hotel operator who have a variety of brands, which many hotel operators do now. They sort of go from budget up to luxury, but they have different brands, and certainly mid-range is what's being considered here. And yes, we in terms of the address, we certainly would be very happy to continue talking about that with street naming, and if an informative needs to be added, that would be acceptable. But I think there's been discussions with officers about whether it's 1 Theobald Street rather than 221 New Kent Road, and we'd be happy with that.
All right.
That's great, thank you.
Very good, thank you very much for that, and I'll get back to you later, Sophie. There's a few questions there that brings out there. Can I now move on to Councillor King's, Sarah King?
Thanks, Chair. I've got, I think, 4 questions that are all on a theme, if that's okay. And I think, and I'll do them, and you can stop me if you want to stop me.
All right, it is Monday morning, but go on.
So
go on. If they're on a single theme, yeah, that's fair enough. It's to the applicant anyway.
Okay. So I don't think it will surprise anyone that I want to focus in on consultation. So we've heard from the objectors that they really don't feel that they've been consulted effectively. I'm also conscious that you raised that you did hold 2 consultation events as part of your pre-app process. So what it would be really useful to know is who was invited to those events, and did it include the Lawson estate? What issues were raised by residents who attended those events? How were those issues addressed as part of the design process? And what commitment are you willing to make with residents going forward as per one of the 4 issues that was raised by the objectors?
Okay, shall I answer that now?
Yes, if you would, please. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. So yes, we did hold 2 consultation events, and the area that we invited to those events, we discussed with planning officers how wide that area should be, and so we took guide from officers really as to how far we should go on that. The estate wasn't included, I have to say, in that, and that may well have been that we were wanting to consult people who would be more immediately affected by the development and who were close to the site. But it is something that we discussed with officers and agreed. Residents were invited to the events by letter, and those were delivered by hand to the addresses within that consultation area. We held our first event in the pub, which is close by. My recollection is that we had quite a good number of people attend that event, which was from an afternoon into the evening. I think we probably had 18 to 20 people come. Full design team was there to answer any questions. That was on the residential scheme. We then held a second event when we were changing the use within the building to hotel, and to show how the scheme is evolving. That was held in June last year. That was held in Draper Hall because of availability, really, to find a venue to be able to hold the event. Again, people were notified by letter. Attendance probably wasn't as much as the pub. In terms of how that consultation event has affected the scheme, there has been a moving away of mass from the northeast corner that's closest to Bartholomew Road. So we were looking to reduce the scale of the building there. We were thinking about fenestration in order to prevent overlooking, and so we removed all windows on the 3-storey element on the mezzanine facing Bartholomew Road. Any windows on the 6-storey element serve stair cores, secondary windows, and really it was windows that are on the tallest part of the building, which probably some 50-60 metres away from Bartholomew Street properties. There are bedrooms there, but I think we felt that was a sufficient distance away. We also, within the application, provided detailed sunlight and daylight analysis. That's something that residents were asking us about. I would just say there was a mention about the entrance and the commercial entrance being near to Bartholomew Street. Again, that was a sort of discussion with design review panel officers about where the commercial entrance should be. We have had further discussions with officers at the end of last week, and we would be willing to relook at that entrance and perhaps move it more onto New Kent Road. And I think it's something that could be dealt with by some form of condition to ask us to come back with a new entrance. So I think it's something that we can address, and do acknowledge concerns of people perhaps congregating outside an entrance close to Bartholomew Road. So we could bring it round and push it along New Kent Road, further away from those residents.
Chair?
Yes, go
ahead. Could I
Yes.
just go back to the fourth part of my question, which was about a commitment to work with residents going forward, and whether you've got a suggested way of doing that?
Yes, apologies, I didn't answer that. So there would be, as part of the Section 106 agreements, a commitment to enter into construction management plans, and within that, I would expect that there would be obligations to carry out ongoing consultation with residents through the construction period, and once the contractor's on board, really to then work out how the building would be built, and then to engage with residents on that, and to look at how it can be best managed in terms of construction impacts.
Thank you. Could I ask one tiny follow-up? I will stop then, I promise.
Right.
It's useful to hear that commitment around construction. Could it, and I don't know if this is possible via Section 106, but would you commit to it being extended to the period of operation of the hotel, so that if there are concerns raised by residents about noise, people leaving, etc., that a future operator would at least have a contact point for residents to engage with in those terms of those issues that might arise?
Yeah, I think with officers we've agreed a series of management plans to go into the Section 106 to cover the yard management, to cover servicing and deliveries to hotel and workspace, and I think we could also have a hotel operator management plan. It's something I've done on other hotels elsewhere. So yes, that there would be the commitment to ensure that the hotel is well run and follows the principles of good neighbourliness.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King, for your questions and the resultant responses. Can I go to Councillor Morell? Councillor Morell?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Chair. I just want to move the conversation onto the actual heritage of the area, and ask the architect in particular how he feels he has responded to the local buildings etc. Because some of the computer-aided these images are very difficult to say, you know, the colour of the building, the materiality, how you responded with window lines, etc. So I just wanted to get more of a clearer picture of how he's responded to the heritage of Bartholomew Street in his design process.
And thank you, Councillor Morell, for that question. I know, forgive me, Clive, I know you wanted to respond to the earlier question. You wish to do that now, and then you can respond to Councillor Morell. Go ahead.
Thank you. So in just response to some of the questions raised about consultation, apologies if Sophie wasn't included in that. Obviously, when we first started this project, Sophie's house hadn't yet been built, and also we weren't sure whether we'd get planning because there were multiple objections about its aesthetic and its relationship to the listed terrace itself. We did consult with lots of people, and I would suggest probably in Bartholomew Road itself, when we had the first consultation, it seemed that most of the residents within that terrace had come to the first consultation. At that consultation, we did modify the scheme because of concerns of residents, and in particular, number 1A, which is where Sophie lives, we modified the scheme massively to reduce its impact onto her garden to line up with the rear elevation, which previously in the current existing building, which is industrial building, far exceeds the maximum terms of length, which is significantly longer than our proposal. It's currently 21 linear meters, and the height at that point where it abuts onto 1A, it's 9 meters in existing. So we've reduced it significantly in order to improve the daylight sunlight onto the garden of 1A. In relation to the overlooking from the east elevation towards the gardens, we've made sure, as Simon said, that we are significantly far away. And obviously, if it's required to demonstrate whether we put any fenestration onto the window, what we've done is to put brise on to kind of mitigate any overlooking as well as solar gain. So we've consulted with the school. We've obviously consulted with everyone that we believe the council would suggest we should have consulted with. And the second consultation, which was moved to a different venue, was primarily because a lot of the residents who were in Bartholomew Road, particularly the elderly residents, were basically unhappy about the fact that they had to walk up the stairs to the room above the pub where the consultation had taken place. So we tried to make sure that the accessibility issues were addressed within the second venue, as well as trying to get a space that we could use. In terms of the second point about the architecture, we've had a brilliant relationship with Southwark case officers, and that involves a cross-section from design officers to area managers, etc., as well as the DRP, where the design, as far as everyone's discussed and we've moved towards, has been seen as exemplary of high standard. So in terms of both the typology, which in this case is hotel, as well as the detailing and the materials used, we've made sure that both its material condition as well as the rhythm of the architecture in terms of how it relates to the listed terrace is something that's been done with extreme consciousness and with total sympathy. Heritage England had no kind of concerns or observations to suggest that they were unhappy. Also, when we went through the design process, obviously we did reduce the massing in order to cascade the building down towards the terrace to ensure that the scale and the view from the terrace towards the building looking from the east to the west was something that was designed to be extremely sympathetic. As was mentioned by the case officer, we've greened all the roofs, which are now inaccessible. Previously, we did have terraces which would be accessible by the inhabitants or the users. We've omitted any roofscape which would overlook into the adjacent properties. And we've taken all precautions to ensure that the SUDs and the environmental issues of the highest standard. So in terms of the design, we believe this will be an exemplary design of extremely high quality and will be comparable, if not better, than most in the borough. We can also demonstrate, if Sophie and others would like to see, our portfolio of previous work, which essentially is of award-winning quality with a huge emphasis on design quality and build quality. So we would never design a scheme from our practice perspective that we didn't believe is of high quality architecture.
Thank you for your response, Clive. We may need to, we'll certainly come back to you later on. Can I just take Councillor Whittam if she wishes to ask a question?
Yeah, most of mine has been answered. I was thinking about the first point of the objectors about frosted windows. So you say you've removed all the windows from the 9-storey element overlook. Would you be willing to frost the rest of the windows further down the building?
So I'll answer that first.
Yes.
So, apologies, we've removed all the windows from the 3-storey element, which is closest to Bartholomew Streets. As the building steps away and sort of tiers upwards. So on the 6-storey element, which is the next tier of the building, the windows in there serve stair cores. They were introduced in the building to break up the massing of that elevation. They could be frosted, and I think a condition could be imposed to do that. Once we get to the 9-storey element, we are quite some distance away from Bartholomew Road. It's probably 50, 60 metres. The architect will be able to confirm that. But I think our view in discussing it with officers was that that's a sufficient distance away to not cause overlooking problems. But if some level of frosting was felt necessary, then again, conditions could be imposed requiring that to take place. But I think we felt with the distance, ordinarily sort of residential to residential windows, 18, 20 metres would be a sufficient distance. We're much in excess of that.
Right. Okay, that's fine. Noted your response. We may need to come back to you later on just to clarify some details there, but I'm keen that we keep moving forward. I know that Clive Source is trying to indicate. Clive, you may wish to respond to Councillor Whittam's question.
Yes, Councillor Whittam. I think it's a good point to bring up.
Could you just maybe raise your volume?
Sorry. I think it's a good point you've brought up. What we have done is omitted any windows on the east elevation facing onto the properties which were less than 20 metres away. So the only windows facing are corridors which have been frosted, and there's no rooms that have any overlooking anywhere in that proximity. Also, we removed windows which were facing directly onto one edge, which I think is very important to acknowledge, which could have been preserved because the current existing windows are in that same position. We took everything out that would offend in terms of overview, but also in terms of light pollution.
Thank you. And of course, what this demonstrates is the importance of good consultation. Because ideally, we should not be doing this at committee, and I would not normally invite members to make a significant amendment to an application. An application is an application is an application. But I do note, both Simon and Clive, your concessions to the well-presented points of the neighbours. I think I wanted to, if I may, just to go back a little bit, and we might have to take care of some of these matters in our open debate, but just to make sure I've understood what has been agreed to prior to us moving on, and I want to make sure I've got note. I had a slight technical problem, and my earlier notes appear to clear themselves automatically, of course, as they would, and so I've missed some of Sophie's initial presentation. So, first of all, the question of New Kent Road to be the entrance, and maybe officers might want to intervene at this point. So New Kent Road clearly is a red route. Okay, I've noted what was said in regards to Theobald Street, but can it be quite clear what is being agreed to here? So the suggestion was that it's been moved for the goods and services entrance. It's been moved. Are you agreeing that you agreed to move that entrance or not? Just so I'm clear. Simon, do you want to respond to that?
Yes. So the discussion on the entrance to the workspace that we've had with officers as to whether we could move that from the Chamford edge more onto the frontage of New Kent Road, we would be willing to do that. I think it can be covered by a condition.
Okay, and I'll go back to planning officers later on and legal officers in regards to that later on. Thank you. Secondly, the condition as regards the control of noise by patrons, or in other words, imposing upon the future operator. You're agreeing that that condition could also be applied to the application as well.
Yes, I think we already, as sort of heads of terms in the 106, have a yard management plan, service and delivery management plan. And I think if officers feel it's necessary, I don't have any problem with this. It could also include a hotel operation management plan to come forward. These would all be things that would have to be submitted and agreed before the hotels can use.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Thank you. Thank you. I just want to make sure, and I will speak to officers in a moment. I just want to make sure I've captured these points. Now, the question of overlooking, if I've understood the responses, making sure I've understood the responses, that you're agreeing that where they're not frosted on that elevation facing overlooking the school, that they should be frosted. No, Clive, yes, Clive.
Clive might answer that. Yeah.
Sorry, Chair. So the distance to the school is over 40 metres.
40 metres. Ah.
So I don't think frosting that would have
Agreed. So the discussion on frosting. Let's make sure I've understood. How did we resolve frosting?
I think as Councillor Whittam brought forward, anything that would deem to be overlooking the neighbours should be frosted, which again, we believe we've done that with the case officers. So anything that's closer than 20 metres has been designed to be frosted, but also has been designed to have no actual accommodation, but just purely corridors or anything that doesn't have any accommodation.
Councillor Whittam, so we agreed in that case that there's no need for additional frosting.
They've removed the windows on the three-storey element, frosted on the 6, and the 9 is far enough away.
Fair enough. That's fine. Thank you. So we will not pursue that further, and we can talk about consultation as part of a wider narrative. So I won't pursue that. Now then, I think we've covered all the key points on this, and there's further clarification for the officers.
Chair, sorry, just to say Councillor Newens has indicated. I don't know.
Right. Thank you indeed, Tim. Councillor Newham, yes. Yes.
Sorry, apologies. Thanks very much. I was actually going to ask about what can be done to address the point of inadequate consultation, but if you're going to deal with that later, that's fine.
Later, yeah, we take care of it later. It's again, it's one of those more broader points which we need to, as I said, this discussion we're having now.
Yeah.
I hope we
Chair, sorry, the applicant is raising his hand.
Please, Simon, is it? Right, Simon, yes, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I think one further point that you may have missed, it was earlier on, but in terms of coaches, we would agree to no coaches, and again, that can go in section 106.
Right. Forgive me, just to be quite clear on the coaches. So, of course, coaches, I understood that the design included an area in which coaches would enter your no. I see Pip say no. So where would coaches currently, forgive me in that case, I may have misinterpreted what's in the report. Where would, if there were coaches, I know that was a question from Councillor McCullum, where would they park? Where would a coach park? If there were a coach?
I don't know, Clive wants to answer. I think it would be on street, so that's a reason to make this a coach-free hotel.
Right. So this is a coach-free hotel, and that's in the report. Can someone maybe point me to the relevant paragraph or page in the report, please? I'd be most grateful.
Chair, Pip is indicating.
Oh, Pip. Yes, go ahead, Pip.
Just to confirm what Alicia said, her presentation, that legal advice to us was to change that from a condition, the coach condition became an obligation. And that was pointed out in Alicia's presentation this morning. There is no suitable location for coaches, and that is why we've made a legal recommendation that this is a coach-free hotel. And within fairness, that is what we have applied similarly elsewhere, along with the Councillor McCallum's recommendation of a address of not being the New Kent Road.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And just for my own peace of mind, can someone just point me to the relevant paragraph or page in the report, please?
Yes, it's paragraph 110.
Thank you.
But obviously we'll need a bit of updating in relation to the condition that has become an obligation.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's what I wanted. Thank you very much. We covered the important points there. Right. In that case, then.
Chair, sorry, two councillors are indicating McCallum and
Very
Merrill.
good. Okay, right. And you must forgive me, I'm using a much smaller screen at the moment, so it's it is interesting. Councillor Morell, I see your name first of all.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify with the coaches, etc. What's the enforcement powers we have on that? Just because we have the objects leaving, and if we agree this and it's a coach-free development, what's our enforcement powers to make sure that actually does happen and accidentally a coach turns up, you know, for some reason? How do we enforce that?
Would you? I realise that we're still on the agents and applicants presentation, but it is relevant, and I'm going to take these questions now. Pip, you want to respond to that, or would?
Yes, they will be that will be a planning infringement as well as a highway infringement, because there is no. That is a 24-hour no parking on the TLRN to the front. And out on our road, we will mark the road because it's access to a school. We already take our duty of care on the highway. So this will have a double whammy that we can enforce it both as a highway authority and a planning authority. And we normally find people are very ready to tell us. And just one other thing that has changed this week, we have now been told that CCTV is able to be accepted as evidence in highway authority things like that. So as COVID has come along, we've got even more strength being able to do that. And just to reiterate, that way, how we've assessed this is that it's fair.
Thank you very much, Pip. Thank you very much. Which is why I asked for the paragraph to make sure it's clear. And I'll take the last question on this to the applicant and agent. Councillor McCallum, did you have a question?
Yes, Chair. I just wanted to clarify the point about the address and how that would be. I think Pip just made reference to it.
Yeah, if I may, if I may, I'm not going to tackle that right now. I want to first of all just go through. We can take over it in our general debate later on. Okay, but I'll let Pip come in early on. Okay. All right, thank you. I want to thank the applicant agent for your presentation, and thank you for your contribution. But please be available to us. We may need you to respond to questions later on. Thank you very much. If I may now move on to a supporter who lives within 100 meters of the application site. Is there a supporter? I'm not known. I don't see one, but can the clerk confirm there are no supporters present?
I can confirm that.
Thank you very much. Is there a ward councillor present?
Yes, Chair.
Very good. I don't recognise. Oh, of course, Helen. Hi. Good. Can I ask you first of all to introduce yourself, and then you will have your 3-minute presentation.
Okay, great. Hi everyone. I'm Councillor Helen Dennis, one of the councillors for Chaucer wards.
Very good. You may begin your presentation now.
Okay, thank you, everyone, and particularly I want to say thank you to the residents who came along and spoke, because I think they've articulated a lot of the concerns very clearly, and I don't want to repeat too much. Just dwelling firstly on the consultation point, I just wanted to reiterate the fact that we've been disappointed by ward councillors by the lack of outreach. I did also check my emails kind of before this meeting. I don't recall being approached as ward councillors regarding this development at any point. When it was a compact living scheme, we found out about that via SE1 website, and I haven't had any contact subsequently with the developers. And if we had, we would have been able to put them in touch with the Lawson and maybe helped organise an event at the Roundhouse, which would have been more appropriate than Draper's Hall. On the substantial point of whether or not to actually approve or refuse this proposal, I just want to draw the committee's attention to some of the design aspects in the report. I wanted to note, firstly, obviously, the significant question really is outlined in paragraph 67 of the report, which is whether or not the committee deems there to be significant harm to the heritage assets. You know, the Georgian terraces primarily on Bartholomew Street, or whether it's less than significant harm. You'll have heard from the residents they believe that it is significant harm. My leaning is towards that position as well. I feel that the development is out of keeping, and whilst it's not tall in the definition that we might use as Southwark Council in relation to tall buildings, if you live in that area in a primarily low-rise residential area, then a 9-storey building in that location, granted stepping down to 6 and then 3, but still 9 stories is significant. Obviously, the Blackfriars Road appeal, which remind everyone of that, does remind the committee that there is scope to look at these design issues and not just take for granted what's put in front of us. So I just flagged that up. There are also some overshadowing issues that haven't necessarily been discussed. We've talked about the privacy issues, but there is going to be overshadowing of 1, 2 and 3 Bartholomew Street 1A on their roof terrace as well, and that hasn't been discussed. I won't go over the points raised from residents. I think they've all been really sensible suggestions. The two other things I just wanted to speak, you can ask me questions about this, relation to the construction impact on the school sites, and also some points and questions on traffic flow on that side of the New Kent Road.
Thank you, Councillor, for your presentation. Committee members, do you have questions for the Councillor? You must forgive me if I don't see your hands going up, but Councillor Newens. Councillor Newens, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Helen, do you have any suggestions as to how the consultation or the lack of consultation issues could be resolved at this stage with the residents living nearby without deferring the application altogether?
I think it's very challenging at this stage, to be honest, because you know, you heard that the last consultation took place last June, I think it was. Clearly, there was some events when the original housing scheme was brought forward, but what hasn't happened is any return to the residents to discuss the hotel scheme, which is why everyone suddenly saw the planning application on the lampposts and felt very confused. Suddenly there's a hotel and no one's ever talked to us about a hotel. So that's obviously been challenging. Obviously, going forward, having a named person, having a mobile phone, you know, in relation to construction issues and then in relation to management issues of the hotel going forward, would, you know, be fundamental, I think. But it's difficult to say at this stage when you're asked to make a decision on an application in front of you how we might resolve further issues in relation to design.
Are there other members of the committee who wish to ask Councillor Dennis a question? I may ask you a question at this point, and it is to do with consultation, but more specifically, did you say that you've not been approached by the applicant or their agents either for a briefing or any introduction as to what is being proposed for this location?
I don't have recollection of being approached, so okay. I don't want to say 100%. I've been on maternity leave for 5 months, but I don't have. I did look through my emails and phone, and I didn't. So unless I accidentally deleted something.
I note some of the objections, notwithstanding what we've heard today. Those who live along George's Bartholomew's Terrace. Have you had direct contact with residents along the terrace, bearing in mind they are listed buildings, and are you able to share responses to or exchange of communication you've had with them and expressions of concern or support for the application?
So it's really only been a flurry in the last week, Chair. I think reflecting the fact that people weren't expecting this application at this point in time and suddenly realising that it was coming to committee. So I've had quite a number of residents contact me objecting to the scheme in the last week, and some correspondence and discussion with Sophie, who presented earlier.
Rightio. In that case, thank you very much. Unless there are questions.
Sorry, Chair, can anyone ask me a question about traffic flow?
If I may ask you, Councillor Dennis, can you just tell us more about traffic flow in that immediate vicinity?
Thank you, Chair. It was just something I've been really reflecting on over the weekends, and it's to do with really any development in this site, but particularly a hotel because of the taxi traffic that it might bring. And I'm glad that we've dealt with the coaches and we're dealing with that in the section 106. That side of the New, as you know, at that point in the New Kent Road is just before the flyover, and it's a dual carriageway. There is people who know Chaucer Ward know that there are long-standing discussions about traffic flow through Chaucer Ward because of the no left turn at the end of Newington Causeway coming down to Elephant and Castle, which has meant that Harper Road has been used as a cut through, was being used by coaches and HGVs and also taxis. So we've been working over the last couple of years probably now with residents around traffic calming measures, trying to get rid of the HGVs and re-divert them up via Great Dover Street down to Bricklayers Arms instead of down Harper Road. So it's just really to flag this up, because if you're a taxi and you're coming from central London to that hotel, I'm not quite sure how you get there. So I think that's just a question that I would want to put back to our to Pip, I think, in the discussion with officers. And apologies that I didn't raise this sooner. It's just something that's kind of been come to light over the weekend in my head. Sorry.
Okay, thank you, and we definitely will. In fact, we put that question to Pip right now. Why not? Well, if you don't mind, Pip. How would a taxi get to this location, bearing in mind the quite significant restrictions, access points that they will have?
Right. Everything depends on where it's coming from. So if we give an example, somebody arrives at Waterloo Station, picks up a black cab, who then puts the postcode into their sat-nav. The sat-nav would take them through the most direct route. Generally, what's happened is that when there are traffic management concerns on it, they have then generally sent alternative routes, and that has impacted on rat running through various locations. Right. However, we have now agreed, London traffic managers, that we keep the website updated with that they're not suitable for this type of traffic, that type of traffic. It is becoming more and more efficient, but it is, and I have to say, it is really not the responsibility of this development to address that directly, but as a council, and I can tell you that for a good 10 years, we as a team, we've been trying to address Harper Road and that thing, but the type of measures that we're allowed to put in under traffic management often cause other problems. So it has to be considered very carefully. and we do believe while there's still been some construction and things happening in that area, it's been very difficult, but as that's coming to an end, I do believe colleagues have been looking at introducing better traffic management for Harper Road, but to the best of my knowledge, they should come through New Kent Road to access that, or if they were coming from London Bridge, they would come down via Bricklayers to come around that way on the strategic road network.
Right.
If you remember, black cabs do get to use red routes, so it's in their interest on their time efficiency to use that where there's a bus route. So Uber technically are not meant to be in London at the moment, but as you know, that's under debate. But it is beyond my power to be able to control that.
All right. In other words, it will have some impact, and these are impacts that will be dealt with at a future point by your officers in conjunction with the GLA and so on. All right. In fact, thank you. I won't pursue that point further. I won't take further questions on that subject further, but I will take questions on the question of this consultation.
Chair, sorry. The applicant seems to be indicating, I don't know if it's...
who's that? Clive. Is it Clive? I think it's Clive. I can see his name. Yeah, go ahead. Yes, Clive.
Yeah. Just to address Councillor Dennis's valid comments, in terms of overshadowing, we have done daylight sunlight, and obviously there is less than substantial harm. The gardens are 85 foot long, generally on that terrace, and we've significantly improved the daylight and sunlight to number 1A. Clearly, we would also follow a construction management plan when the construction of this building would be executed, would be part of the 106, and absolutely would follow what the council's remit would be. And in terms of heritage, we as architects are extremely kind of willing always to work with Heritage England. We have lots of buildings next to very kind of sensitive sites. So we do believe that we have taken on board all the issues raised by the case officer. We've consulted with Heritage England, and we have made a design that we believe would, in our opinion, as well as the expert's opinion, which is your DRP, as well as your case officers and team leaders, address that concern. And lastly, in terms of the consultation, we have really done our best to consult with everyone in the terrace. And we did meet in the first consultation with what we believe to be more than 30 people who lived in the terrace alone, and discussed with them at length with models and visuals all the issues that they brought up, which is why we reduced the footprint significantly in order not to have overlooking or overshadowing into their gardens, and also to reduce the impact on the terrace, which we can show through the process, which is in our design access statement, a very kind of elaborate and very constructive approach, both through the consultation process and your case officers, who assisted greatly in trying to ensure that this design was deemed to be of a high standard. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, and thank you very much. I won't take further responses at this stage. I want to first of all thank Councillor Dennis for her contribution and the question and responding to committee members' questions. Thank you. I'm going to move forward. I now want to bring to committee members' attention a number of issues that's been raised as a result of receiving evidence, and let's tackle consultation straight away. And notwithstanding Clive Saw's response to the consultation question, and I note that we appear to be involved in quite a number of discussions here, amendments which I would not have expected to have occurred at this meeting. Okay. And that usually occurs where consultation has not been sufficient. Okay, that's simply been my experience. Okay, so I want to make sure it's clearly understood. So
Sorry, Chair, Councillor Whittam seems to be indicating quite.
I've noted. Sorry, I have noted that. Sorry, I've noted Councillor Whittam, but I just want to continue. So I note that a consultation has been held. And as Clive Saw, the architect, has noted, it has been attended by those who live in the terrace who are immediately affected. Okay. Now, I'm very conscious that Deborah has indicated you want to respond to that, and I'm going to invite Deborah to respond, because clearly those who are immediately affected live in the terraces, and of course you represent the TRA, which I assume include residents who live in the terraces. I'm assuming. Is that right, Deborah? If you could just, you're on mute. You're on mute at the moment.
Sorry, Chair. No, that's not correct, actually. What it is we have 81 properties that are at the end of the terraces. So where the local pub is, where the consultation was held on a residential build, we were not invited to that consultation, and yet we have 81 properties next to the pub, literally next to the pub, which is at the end of the terraces. We have a very small street called Deverell Street, and then we have 81 properties that could have all been invited and none were. On Saturday, I did a walkabout with some community meals for our neighbourhood, and I have checked with 81 properties that are all at the end of these terraces, and not one person was consulted on. Not one.
Can I ask you, please, Deborah, could you just pause for a second, and I may ask the officers just for clarification, the 81 properties to which Deborah Walsh is referring to, are they within the 100 or 200 metre zone that we typically would ensure are consulted, and therefore would recommend an applicant would consult? Would that be correct? Can an officer confirm?
Yes, that is correct. Those properties would lie within the 100 metre radius, and we have sent letters.
Right, you have, but okay. Thank you for that. Thank you, Alicia. Could continue, Deborah. Could you just continue?
My concern is that not enough people have had chance to consult on this, and the context of this whole building is completely out of shape with the local area. We have an all-girls school that will be within the vicinity of this project, as well as having a school that will be behind this project. Obviously, we're talking about frosted windows not being that far, corridors, but people can still look out of those. We'll have an influx of traffic, even if they move from Bartholomew Street with their entrance into Theobald Street. Theobald Street also serves the school, Chair.
Okay.
So we have to consider those elements, and had our local tenants and residents association, which are very active around here, Chair, very active. We have 17 members that all live within these properties. Had they been consulted or been asked to join part of this, I think we might have been having a better working partnership than we have right now. I've not seen either the architect or Mr. Wallace.
Oh, you're on mute now. I've not put you on mute. You're on mute at the moment, Deborah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I've not had any notice of either of this, and the Roundhouse Hall is literally 5 minutes away from this development that has disabled access, and we could have held a very strong meeting there with up to 65 people, not 18 people. We have a lot of people this will affect, and 18 voices doesn't reflect their concerns.
Thank you very much, Ren. Thank you very much for that. What I don't want to do is go a tic-tac between the contributors. It really is important, and so I'm not going to go further on the question of consultation, because it's pretty clear the extent to which the consultation occurred. It was not sufficient, it would appear, and unless there no further evidence has been offered otherwise. But that is a fact, and we now need to move it forward. I just want to address the issue of the control of noise, and the applicants accepting, or the applicant agents accepting, that an hotel operator's management plan is sufficient, and they're happy for that to be in place. I'm happy with that, and of course the question of the impact on St George, on the St George's Terrace, is an interesting, Bartholomew's Terrace is an interesting one. And if I may go back to the officer, and I will come back to you, Councillor Whittam, in a second. Just want to tackle that thoroughly. So the application has been amended in response to consultation, which include the statutory consultees. Can I just be absolutely clear? You said that the effect or the harm is less than harmful. Can you tell us what harm is being caused by this current design as proposed? What harm is actually being proposed that we should accept? Who would respond to that?
Shall I respond, Chair?
Yep.
Sorry,
Tim.
this is Tim Cutts here. I think, I mean, the fact that it is within the setting of that listed building or the group of listed buildings there, and as the report notes, the scale is different from those from the listed assets around. However, we think that the distribution of the heights around the site is very well considered. So the fact that the building steps up from east to west, with the tallest part being furthest from the listed Bartholomew Street, and the eastern part being 3 stories, then going up to 6 stories, we feel that there is sufficient visual separation there that does mitigate the impact on the listed terrace. I think it's also worth recognising that the site is located on a corner. So actually, as you walk east to west along Bartholomew Street, the actual 9-story element of the building would be very limited. So the views of that 9-story element would be very limited, given that it's kind of slightly around the corner. In terms of that 9-story element, the west side of the site is less sensitive. There's a petrol station on the west side of Theobald Street that at some stage we would expect to come forward for a redevelopment. And it's also worth noting that that height is roughly comparable to the height of Driscoll House, which is on the other side of the New Kent Road. So in all, I mean, those are the reasons why we feel that any harm on that listed terrace is less than substantial.
Thank you. Thank you for your response. Thank you for your response. Councillor Whittam.
I was going to ask the officer about the consultation letter that went out to all those addresses in Annex 1, including all the properties in Lawson Estate, whether the letters actually stated when and where consultation events were happening, or was it just a letter saying this has come forward for redevelopment?
Perhaps I can answer that, Councillor Whittam. The letter that came from the council would simply have been notifying local people that the planning application had been submitted and inviting comments from local people. The organisation of pre-application consultation in the pub or in the Draper estate, for example, that would have been organised by the developer, and the invitations to those meetings would have come from the developer. As you noted, though, at least our records indicate that the planning application was advertised widely, including to the Lawson estate. Thinking about how that can be managed moving forward, one of the things that we could suggest is that as part of the construction and management plan, the developer is required to issue a monthly newsletter that would go to the residents on Bartholomew Street and to the residents on the Lawson estate. There could be regular updates to a website, and the developer should provide a single point of contact, as I think was mentioned earlier, so that it's clear who people need to can contact if they wish to discuss the development.
Which is usual practice, I would imagine, anyway. I imagine.
It would be the usual practice that the developer has to provide a single point of contact, and yeah, we would encourage developers to communicate with local residents on the progress of the construction of their schemes. But it might be worth specifying that here, that should be included within the management and construction plan.
Noted. Duly noted. Councillor King, I believe you have a question. Councillor King?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I was muted. I was just on that point about the detail around ongoing resident engagement in the construction management plan. Can we also include within that the ward councillors are part of that process, given that ward councillors will have the reach into the community, which it feels that this will be needed going forward?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Very good. Very good. Thank you very much. Very, very much. Are there further comments you want to make? In fact, if I may, whilst I'm here at this point, sorry, Councillor McCallum, just give me a moment. Is Sophie still on the line? Is she still there? I can't see her.
Sorry, I'm
okay. Okay. First of all, again, thank you for your earlier presentation and points you've raised. I believe most of your points, if not all, have now been responded to. Would you agree?
I would agree. If I was just to go back over them, I think the privacy point was the first point on the frosting. I think we really appreciate the amendments that have been made. I think as a community, our concern still raises that at the highest point of 9 stories, that's the point at which you're most overlooked. Our garden is on the top of our roof, so that would be overlooking quite directly, but we appreciate that, and we appreciate the kind of work on frosting. I think, look, it's deeply concerning, specifically those in the main body hotel will look most considerably down on the family's private gardens. It would be great if those could also be frosted, or we can have some kind of assurance that they're not in hotel bedrooms. Corridors, I appreciate, but I think some of them within the report, and excuse me, I'm a bit of a layperson when it comes to this, but was saying secondary light sources within bedrooms, which to me sounded like a window, but I don't know. So that would be one point. I think the second point that we had was around the shared workspace, which I think you kindly moved down the New Kent Road, which would be a point and would really help with the impact. And then I think we talked about the coaches, which is great, having a non-coach operated hotel. And also moving the address to Theobald Street. I think, look, a lot of these points are quite good examples of, it's great to have this back and forth today, but the coach, if I take that as an example, is just a glaring example of the lack of communication to date. We could have been reassured on this months or weeks ago, or even since last June, when the last face-to-face was, but unfortunately we're only hearing this now, and it would have just, I think, put everyone more at rest. I think, look, as all these things, it's still not an endorsement of the proposal going ahead. It's just making the most of a bad outcome. The only other, and then we've talked about consultation, so I'll leave that. I won't tackle that one.
Thank you.
Would be, which I think might have been buried slightly in what I initially mentioned, and I think Councillor Dennis also mentioned this, was around the concerns from the Southwark DRP's concerns in paragraph 77, where officers say the scheme is amended, but it doesn't seem to have since gone back to the DRP. That would just be one outstanding point, which I know is of importance to the community.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I've really noted. I'm sorry, who's speaking? Oh, no way. I might just tackle that DRP. I don't believe it's a usual practice to do this. I believe it's planning officers would seek to note the DRP's comments and seek to address them as part of the compilation of the report in discussion with the applicant. Am I right in saying that, Alicia? Would that be right?
Shall I answer that one, Chair?
Oh, of course, Tim. Yes.
Sorry, Tim Kurtz. Yes, no, you're correct there. So in a scheme of this scale, we wouldn't normally expect to report it back to the design review panel. However, the design review panel obviously did provide very valuable comments when they did see the scheme, and working with the applicants, we sought to ensure that those comments have been addressed.
Very good. In that case, thank you very much. In that case, then, are there further comments from committee members?
Chair, 2 have indicated, Councillors Merrill and McCallum.
Right. Oh, I see. Forgive me. Councillor McCallum and then followed by Councillor Morell. Closing comments. Councillor McCallum.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, just as a general comment, firstly, actually, I'm pleased that we have been able to find, hopefully, solutions to the specific issues that have been raised, and hopefully that will be positive if the scheme is approved. Can I just, though, go back to the question of the address, and I just want to get some clarity on exactly how it will be secured as part of the consent.
Yeah, I believe we had a response from Pip on this one, but Pip, if you wish to just clarify, just to ensure there's no misunderstanding, go ahead.
I do believe that we will use the precedent that you suggested, Councillor McCullum, of the one that we did at Union Street, that the numbering of properties in our borough is under our control, and therefore we will put the instruction to our colleagues that do that role that this will be a Theobald Street address.
Okay. So therefore it's an informative, it doesn't require a condition here. Right.
No, I don't believe so. I think we all, and the applicant has agreed that that's something they would accept. So I think that it just needs to be a note in the minutes that we will take care of that. Hopefully that will be satisfactory.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor McCullum, for that clarification. Councillor Morell, last question now.
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's not really a question, it's a bit of an observation that obviously we're making these recommendations to change, to Theodore Street and that, but I'm just worried about the knock-on effects of people that don't know this is happening, because I didn't realise Theodore Street was used for the school. So if the taxis are going there, that's changing the... So in a way, we're making decisions, but there might be other objectives to the decisions we're making. So as you said earlier, Chair, the application is the application.
Indeed, indeed. I'm trying to be careful about these matters. Anyway, Pip, did you want to make a comment on that at all?
We have worked with the applicant for a long time on acknowledging the role of it as an access to the school, and that is why we insisted on off-street servicing on Theobald Street, and that the applicant, they are bound to provide how that will be managed for the various different applications in this site, so the industrial, the commercial and the residents, and that is something TfL insisted on as well as ourselves. So as I always say, this applicant has agreed to everything that will be deemed as fair as any similar application that we have done on the strategic road network in the borough recently.
Very good, thank you. Now then, I believe we've had a question already from Councillor Newlands. If I can move on, that's correct. You're in both cases. No, haven't yet. I thought your digital hand was still up previously. You still have a question?
I wanted to ask. Okay. I feel very uneasy about the information that we've received this morning about the lack of consultation, and I just wanted to ask. I feel very concerned, like sort of going away on the sort of hearsay that that can be done afterwards, and I think as Councillor Dennis already pointed out, that's probably the wrong way round. We should be doing this thing. I feel very uncomfortable about doing an application where that minimum threshold of consultation has apparently not been reached, and I think we should defer the application until it has been reached. We've heard of sort of the block where you've got 500 residents who knew nothing about what was going on. I think that this sets a very, very bad precedent. I think there is no excuse for the lack of consultation that has happened so far. And I think by approving it, we would be saying, oh, that's all right, we'll pay lip service to it after the event. I don't think that's good enough, and I think that it should be deferred for that reason.
All righty. I suppose I'm going to return to you a second. I'm going to take Councillor King, then I'll return to you, Councillor Newlands. I will return to you in a second. Councillor King, did you have a comment to make?
I actually had a question of clarification for the officers, please. So right. I think a comment first is that this is a second application in this meeting, and the one we had the pleasure of looking at first had lots of good quality consultation. I think it was quite evident in how we went through that application that it had taken place. But what I wasn't sure is whether officers feel that the applicant has actually reached the minimum threshold of consultation or whether they feel that they haven't. I think it's evident that the consultation hasn't been of quality, but I think there's a difference between it being of quality and it meeting a minimum threshold. So it would just be really useful to understand that from the officer perspective.
Who's going to respond? Tim, Alicia, who's going to respond?
Shall I respond to that, Chair?
Please.
I haven't been directly involved in the consultation that the applicant has made. I mean, what I can hear from this meeting is that the people are unhappy generally with what has been done. What I can say that as a council in advertising the application, our records show that we have complied with our protocols. I think that the applicant team have heard the unhappiness about consultation that has been carried out to date. And my suggestion is that's rectified through the design and through the construction management plan, which needs regular updates to all the residents around the site, as well as the school. Needs a monthly newsletter, updates to the website, and it needs a single point of contact.
Duly noted. And I think going back, and thank you, Tim, for that. I think Councillor Newens and Councillor Morell. I think it is important that what we've just heard is that at the pre-app stage, there are requirements and should be requirements for applicants to consult widely, because it ensures them that their scheme broadly gains support. But of course, the minimum requirement has been met. Our judgment at this point is whether or not the scheme itself is policy compliant. The report is pretty clear in that regard, that broadly speaking, it is policy compliant. The issues raised by the objectors, and I've asked questions directly, broadly speaking, have been responded to, and responded to reasonably positively as well. So returning to Councillor Newens, whilst I hear the proposed motion, I'm not going to take the motion because there's no evidence here to suggest that the applicant did not meet at least the minimum threshold. Okay, but I do want to flag up nevertheless, though, that there's expectation for this committee that all applicants should consult and consult widely. Be mindful that this committee may well take a dim view where consultation does not meet the minimum threshold. We may respond to that quite negatively. But on this occasion, whilst we have concerns about consultation, the consultation minimum threshold has been met. So we now need to assess the report and the evidence presented to us in oral form today, and taking note that the applicant has responded positively to all the suggestions put forward initially to the objectors, and I believe the objectors, broadly speaking, are happy with the response. And I think the term used, well, it's a response. It could have been better, but it's still been responded to. And you know what? That type of pragmatism I could work with any day. But we've got to make sure in future it is better. All round, it's better. So without further ado, I'm not going to take further questions. I want to now move to a further motion, and as follows: that we adopt the officer's recommendation as set out in paragraph 1 to 2 of the report on 140 of the agenda pack, that the planning permission be granted subject to condition and the applicant entering into a satisfactory legal agreement. That in the event of the legal agreement not entered into by the 15th of December 2020, the Director of Planning be authorised to refuse planning permission if appropriate for the reasons set out in paragraph 143 of the report. And I'll add to that motion, of course, the note referencing the changes as agreed at this meeting. Okay. Now, is there a seconder to that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Whittam. I'll now do the usual roll call. And it'd be for, against, or abstain. Can I first of all start with Councillor Whittam? Are you for the motion? Thank you very much. Councillor Barry Hargrove, for, against, or abstain. Thank you very much. Councillor Sarah King, for, against, or abstain. Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor Hamish McCullum, for, against, or abstain.
For.
Thank you very much. Councillor Darren Morell, for, against, or abstain.
Abstain.
Very good, thank you. For Councillor Marky Newland, for, against, or abstain.
Abstain.
Very good. And Councillor Damon O'Brien, for, against, or abstain.
For.
Thank you. And I'm Councillor Martin Seaton, and I vote for the motion. A majority had voted. The motion is carried. I want to thank you all contributors to this meeting, and thank you. And of course, we have a 45-minute break, at least I have, until the next meeting. Thank you all, and good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.